My name is Andy Veyer. I'm the President and CEO of the Guelph Chamber of Commerce. I will be moderating the discussion this morning. As the leading voice of Guelph's business community, the Guelph Chamber is pleased to be hosting this Q&A session. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. Before we begin, let us take the time to reflect on our privilege to live and work in Guelph, a city built over rich Indigenous histories. Collectively, we have a responsibility to care for this land, the people who live here today, and the generations to come. If our actions today can move us towards reconciliation, we should take pause and make those decisions with intention and with gratitude. Guelph has served as traditional lands and a place of refuge for many peoples over time, but more specifically, the Attawandarog and the Haudenosaunee. This land is held as treaty lands and territory with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and lies directly adjacent to the Haldimand Tract, part of a long-established traditional hunting ground for the Six Nations of the Grand River. First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people who have come from across Turtle Island call Guelph home today. So we're pleased today to be joined this morning by Mike Schreiner, the Ontario Green Party, Cameron Spence, the Ontario NDP, and Mustafa Zubari, Ontario Liberal. So I'm just going to go over some ground rules before we get started so that we have a nice, fair debate today. So the format that's going to be used this morning is that the order in which candidates speak will be done in alphabetical order of the candidates' last names. First, each candidate is going to be allowed 90 seconds for opening remarks. We will then move to a Q&A session. The questions have come from members of the Guelph Chamber and members of the community. The topics we will cover today include affordability, housing, competitiveness, healthcare, education, and the workforce. Candidates will each be given 1 minute to answer the question, and you will be able to monitor your time on the screen. Please note that in the interest of time, each candidate may be cut off after the time allocated has passed, which I will do so gently, and the order questions are answered will be identified by the moderator on a rotating basis. So, candidates, you're going to have the opportunity for a rebuttal if you or your party have been directly named by another candidate. In addition, rebuttals have the following rules. Rebuttals will not be allowed based on the comments made during opening or closing remarks. Requests for rebuttal will be signaled to the moderator by using the raise hand function in Zoom. There are no rebuttals to rebuttals. Otherwise, we're going to spiral here. My decision as a moderator will be final, and rebuttals are limited to 1 minute as well. Lastly, each candidate will be given the opportunity to make a closing statement. The candidate order will be reversed from their introductions at the start. Closing statements are limited to 90 seconds in length. So that we may get through as many questions as possible, we ask the candidates to be respectful of the time and, as always, also of each other. Candidates, also be sure to mute yourself when you are not talking. So we're going to get a 90-second timer started here, which my team's going to do. And I'm going to introduce the candidates in the following order. So Mike, you're going to be first, then it'll be Cameron, and then it'll be Mustafa for this. So you're actually going to be given 90-second timer each, and Mike, you're going to start us off. So we'll just get the timer up on the screen, and it's good. Go
Thanks,
ahead, Mike.
Andy, and the Chamber for hosting today's debate. And I just want to thank my fellow candidates for putting your names forward and being part of this conversation. Andy, I've really appreciated the work I've been able to do with the Chamber to support businesses in particular, but I've also really appreciated the work the Chamber has done just to support the broader community, especially when it comes to housing, which is a top priority for me. And leadership for me is really about putting service above self. And that's really how I've approached my time as MPP. And I'm proud of what a lot of us have done together as a community to address concerns in Guelph. And I'll start with housing. It's pretty rare to have an opposition member have a budget request highlighted in the government's budget. And we accomplished that with the funding we received for permanent supportive housing here in Guelph, particularly for the Kindle project and Stepping Stone. And that wouldn't have been possible if the business community hadn't stepped up. I remember a conversation in my office with Skyline saying, "Hey, how can we help Guelph?" And I was like, "Hey, let's work together to build permanent supportive housing." And the business community, nonprofit, private sector, public sector, all three levels of government secured both the capital funding and the operational funding to help move people from encampments into housing. And I want to continue to do that kind of work as MPP, and that's why I'm running for re-election.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. I really appreciate that. Cameron, it'll be your 90 seconds.
Hi, I'm So happy to be here. Happy to be talking to the people of Guelph again. And want to thank Mike for going on stage. It was a great performance by all. And we heard Doug talk about the economy and how the NDP and other parties are going to tax people. But we didn't hear him talk about the people who run the economy, right? The economy is not just some sort of thing that floats there and doesn't have any connection to labor, right? This town has plenty of factories, plenty of people who are working, plenty of business owners who are having a hard time. Um, and by Doug not mentioning the people in the economy who run the economy, he's catering to his friends who own the economy, who own many of these businesses, large businesses like the Westons. What we need in Guelph is an affordable economy. What we need in Guelph is a healthy economy. And a healthy economy is one that starts with the health of people, right? An affordable economy is one that starts with affordability for regular people, for workers. An educated economy helps people move up out of poverty, and an economy that provides housing for all, not just for the very rich, but has a housing first policy for our homeless, is an economy that works for everyone, a healthy one, and one that we want in Guelph.
Great. Thanks so much, Cameron. Really appreciate that. Mustafa, last but not least, you're up.
Well, good morning, Guelph and Guelph Chamber of Commerce. Thank you so much for having me over. My name is Mustafa Zuberi, and it's a pleasure to get to speak with my fellow candidates again. So my story begins in Guelph like around 11 years ago when my family and I moved here with little to nothing to ourselves, and I live with a single mother. Guelph has been a community that's always given to us and helped us grow to the point where we are today. And with that being said, the reason why I've stepped up for this candidate role is because out of everything that the city has given back to me, part of that is because we're a healthy community. We help each other raise to the point where we are at right now and build each other up. It's part of the reasons why we've got healthy businesses and business groups like Guelph Chamber of Commerce that has to help those small businesses grow and strive to what they are today. Unfortunately, Guelph has been struggling over the last few years under the watch of Doug Ford and the PCs, where businesses haven't been doing the best and people have been feeling that pinch of being living paycheck to paycheck. It doesn't have to be this way. And it's not just the business of people who are struggling, it's our infrastructure as a whole, whether that's hospitals, healthcare, education, housing affordability. We can go on and on, our public infrastructure, so on and so forth, which is why I'm glad that I'm here to talk about that today. We need to bring in tangible solutions to be fixing these issues. And I'm glad that I'm here sharing the stage with my colleagues. I'll be looking forward to be having a good debate. And thank you so much for having me over. Really appreciate it.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mustafa. I appreciate that. For the first question that we're going to start off with is can you go Cameron, Mustafa, and then Mike? Okay. So Cameron, you're going to start us off. I'm just going to read you the question here. So as we know, a big part of campaigning is door knocking. As a former campaign manager, I know this very well. As you go into our community, what are you hearing as the biggest concern for Guelph residents this election, Cameron? You're on mute. Sorry, Cameron, you're on mute.
I'm hearing a lot about, thank you for, yeah, I'm hearing a lot about affordability, about um, healthcare. I mean, I had a constituent text me this morning, very worried about ODSP and whether that would be increased. And this is a person who has raised more than $80,000 for charity, well-being on ODSP. A lot of people think that they don't that people on ODSP don't do things that are productive for the community, but they do. And we have a government that doesn't believe that. I've also been hearing about housing. I myself hope to have a dream of owning a house, but don't see a pathway to it. And we need to provide a pathway to affordable housing in Guelph, deeply affordable housing. And those are some of the things that I've heard also to do with our homeless population as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Cameron. All right, Mustafa, what are you hearing at the doors?
There we go. Yeah, so number one issue, like we all can agree, has been housing affordability. I'm a 24-year-old postgraduate from the University of Guelph. My age group, I'm sure with a lot of other age groups, are having a tough time getting into that zone of buying a home. And that has been a dream that has been crushed in my generation. And unfortunately, a lot of us, like I said, have given up on the idea of buying a home eventually. Cameron and I can share the same sort of idea there. So, students as a whole feel this brain drain across Ontario that how can we buy a home? How can we go forward with this? Along with that, there's many other different people in our society, people living on the brink of financial collapse. And which is why I'm happy to share that the Ontario Liberals and I will be doubling the ODSP, giving the tax cuts, bringing in incentives that will not just make it cheaper to build houses, but at the same time, give a fresh idea and a fresh start for people to buy a home in the future, like myself and many other people.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mustafa. Wow, there's some interesting music happening when that timer comes up, apparently. Mike, if you want to tell us a bit what you're hearing at the doors.
Yeah, no, I love knocking on doors, and housing affordability and healthcare is the number one issue people talk about. And I'm proud of the work the Ontario Greens have done. I'm putting forward the boldest housing plan, some housing experts say, of any party in the country. Our first-time homebuyers plan would help reduce fees and taxes to save first-time homebuyers up to $150,000 on a home built within existing urban boundaries. So we don't have to pave over our farmlands, our wetlands, etc. Protections for renters, and having government come back to the table to build deeply affordable nonprofit and co-op housing. 93% of our deeply affordable homes were built before 1995. We have to change that. On healthcare, I've worked really hard to secure funding for expansion of our existing hospital, Guelph General, and proud that we've gotten through phase one approval of a new hospital, but we got a lot of work to do to get that across the finish line. And I'm hoping if reelected, I can get it across the finish line for our community.
Great. Thank you so much, Mike. Really appreciate that. So the order of the second question is going to go Mustafa, Mike, and then Cameron. So we know that healthcare is a vital component. This is a great segue. Thank you so much, Mike. So we know that healthcare is a vital component of productive workforce. There are numerous challenges with primary healthcare, hospitals, and other community health services. How would you address the gaps in healthcare in Ontario and in Guelph? Mustafa.
So like I've mentioned before, there's many issues that are going on in Ontario. I can't r rank them. I believe, in my opinion, that they're all equal and they should be addressed immediately. Healthcare being one of them. Within the first 4 years of our government, we will make sure that each and every Ontarian gets a family doctor. We have the Guelph General Hospital that's operating at over 100% capacity. In the short term, we'll be looking at expanding and renovating the current hospital, and in the long term, we will look at a potential second site for a second hospital. And at the same time, I'm proud to announce that if given the chance to be your next MPP, we will be investing in a medical school here in Guelph at the University of Guelph, medical, which will bring bright medical minds here to Guelph from here and across the world that will immediately address the healthcare crisis that we have. And then in the future, give us more access to healthcare, not just the hospitals that we have, but also at the University of Guelph, which is a massive innovator for research, healthcare, and sciences across. And ending long-term healthcare too, which be something that I'll be love to talk about in the future as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Mustafa. Mike.
Yeah, so I think when we think about healthcare, the biggest challenge we're facing across the province is a staffing shortage. Doctors, nurses, technicians, frontline healthcare workers, primarily driven by the Ford government's unconstitutional wage restraint legislation. So investing in the people who deliver care, ensuring everyone has access to a family doctor, nurse practitioner, primary healthcare provider is top priority. Ensuring that we have wage parity across all sectors of our healthcare system so we don't have the staffing shortages we see in long-term care, home and community care, hospitals, etc. We're going to have to also talk about the need to invest in mental health. Mental health is health, and the Ontario Greens are proposing substantial increases in base budget funding for community mental health services as a first step to having mental health covered over through OHIP.
Great. Thank you so much, Mike. Cameron.
So, some of the other parties will tell you that all we need to do is invest in more healthcare staff, but really, we have to approach this from a whole system, right? When we want mental health, we need to have great childcare from the very beginning, great mental health supports within school. When we want to have primary care doctors, we need to have the proper services to support those primary care doctors. We need to have the imaging services and the setup, a system-wide setup that allows for doctors to work in the community, nurses to work in the community, and of course, we need to hire those new people, those new nurses and doctors who we've burnt out during the pandemic. It's a big concern. There's a lot of things. I think we lack an imagination about how much better we can make things, and we can. And with the NDP, we can get you there.
Great. Thank you so much, Cameron. The order for the next question is going to be Mike, Cameron, and then Mustafa. So, what are your plans to address the growing mental health and homelessness crisis that has been impacting our community? Obviously, a big one. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, Andy. Well, I would say it starts with putting care first and having a housing first strategy. I think Premier Ford's approach of, I'm just going to wave the white flag and criminalize homelessness is just the wrong way to go. The Ontario Greens have a plan to invest in building 310,000 deeply affordable nonprofit and co-op and supportive housing. Included in that number would be 60,000 permanent supportive housing units with wraparound mental health, addictions, employment, and other supports. As I mentioned earlier, 93% of the deeply affordable homes built in Ontario were built before 1995. That's when government got out of supporting deeply affordable homes. I think the Scotiabank report on the need to invest once again in co-op and nonprofit housing that's deeply affordable is critically important, and it's a priority for me.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Cameron, you're going to be up next.
Yeah, so healthcare and mental health and health are the same thing. And we have to recognize that we have a lot of industrial workers in Guelph, and those industrial workers could get help, or sorry, they could get hurt and end up spending 6 months maybe on opiates and then have a very hard transition back to work after a surgery and also coming off the opiates. And we end up with people who end up on the street. The NDP wants a housing first solution. This is a solution that worked around the world. It's nothing radical. It's just simple evidence-based policy, which we're not getting from our current government. We'd like to build 60,000 supportive houses, make sure those houses are there for people to get people off the street. And most importantly, we want to take that off of the municipalities so the city would not have to pay for that. The city would be running it. We would be covering shelter costs, and that might, benefit the city immensely.
Great. Thank you so much, Cameron. Mustafa.
So, my colleagues brought a great point that mental health is health, and I'm sure that we can all agree on that part right there. And like again, we don't need to penalize the people that have gone through some tough times in their life. And mental health and a healthy financial lifestyle go hand in hand together, in my opinion, which I believe is the reason why that if we were to look at affordable housing, it will bring in measures like bringing back rental control, removing the land transfer elimination tax, which will help us save $13,500 on the start of buying a home for an average family, which I believe with the current taxes adds up to more than $60,000 in savings of buying a new home. At the same time, bringing in development charges reform, fixing the rental and tenant disputes from 2 months of when they start. So when you are looking to buy or rent a new place, these are some of the things that will help you save money at the same time, get a more affordable home. These things can go hand in hand. And if we address these crises, we will be able to address the mental health crisis along with that by having an affordable housing and mental health services available at the same time.
Great. Thank you so much for all your answers there. So the next question is going to be Cameron, Mustafa, and then Mike. So Guelph and other communities have been calling for improved interregional connectivity for people and goods for decades. How will your party advance projects such as the two-way all-day GO train, the Morriston bypass, and expediting the new Highway 7? So we're going to start with Cameron.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so we're going to support the bypass, support 7. We're going to bring in all day two-way GO, electrify the rails. That's really the best way, the cheapest way to provide great transit service. And we're also going to cover 50% of the net operating costs of transit in the city. And that again is another way that the city can allow the city to improve the transit. We're providing a new deal for municipalities that are going to allow for better solutions with transit, and to allow people to move easier through Guelph. We've seen with the snow day yesterday that it's been really difficult to clear the snow from sidewalks, which is really important for parents and for kids. And hopefully, by providing more funding to the municipality, they can get that snow off the streets quickly, and we're not having snow days.
Great. Thank you so much, Cameron. Mustafa, go ahead.
Oh, there's a lot to bring in for the minute that I have here, but first of all, we will be investing in $15 billion across major highway projects across the province. That includes Highway 7. The Liberals were the ones who invested in the piece of land that it is sitting here today since the last 7 years. We'll be looking to bring that work back and getting the work done. Highway 6 needs major improvements. We will be fixing Highway 6, bringing in interchanges at Stone and Downey that will help fix the traffic congestion and at the same time expand the highway as well. We will be looking to bringing all-day two-way GO transit. We were the ones that built the platform and the parking lot. It's just waiting to be done, getting the work started. It hasn't been touched in the last 7 years. We'll be fixing that in the short term. And the long term, in my last meeting, I did bring up that the Liberals were looking at a bullet train that would go from Kitchener to Toronto. This is a long-term plan. It would be 20 minutes each way. This would immediately change the entire game of transportation and business going in and out of Guelph. And having 20 minutes each way would really change the game overall. I wish I could talk about it more, but there's a lot to talk about on this subject.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And Mike.
Yeah, Andy, every time the premier talks about tunneling the 401 or building Highway 413, it delays projects like the Morrison Bypass, grade separation on the Hanlon, and Highway 7. So I'm going to keep pushing against these unnecessary, highly expensive projects in the GTA so we can fund projects in the rest of the province, including our region. I'm now on my second government that has failed to deliver all-day two-way GO, and I'm going to keep fighting hard for that to at least get a schedule of when it's going to be delivered. And in the meantime, I'm going to continue to keep pushing for direct intercity bus connections. We've finally, after years of advocacy, got a bus from Kitchener to Guelph to Hamilton, but it only runs a couple times a day. So we need to have it throughout the day. I can't tell you how many people have told me if we had at least direct bus service between Guelph and KW especially, but also Hamilton, Brantford, Cambridge, throughout the region, it would improve transportation in the area.
Great. Thank you so much. I believe, Mustafa, you don't get to rebuttal because he didn't mention you by name. So sorry about that. But the next question is
I just
about
wanted to add on to something, but no problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next question does handle local infrastructure a little bit, so in service delivery needs. So maybe it could be a good opportunity. And you actually do start us off with this, Mustafa. So Mustafa, Mike, Cameron is the order for this. So cities across Ontario are struggling to meet local infrastructure, housing, and service delivery needs. As Guelph's representative at Queen's Park, how would you ensure the city of Guelph has support from upper levels of government to address these funding challenges? Mustafa.
100%, Andy. Thank you for that question. It's a really, really important subject. A lot of people don't know that what's going on right now is that the province has continually downplayed and downgraded their responsibilities and a lot of the infrastructure over responsibilities over to cities like Guelph and many other municipalities that are struggling to pretty much pay with the basic necessities that need to be paid with. I was sitting with Mayor Cam Guthrie the other day, and he said that Mustafa, we are struggling as a city. We have our hands tied, unfortunately, which a lot of people don't understand goes hand in hand with the rising cost of our property taxes. People need to understand that when the province downplays its responsibilities over to the cities and municipalities across Ontario are raising property taxes. So, me being your MPP, my main job would be to bring that incentives and the investments that necessary to keep our projects going, to keep our streets safer, to keep our services running at a smoother and much faster rate. So my job as MPP is to bring those investments in, and investments fast, so that people in Guelph get lower taxes and a better reward for the taxes that they pay.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And then we're going to pass over to Mike.
Yeah, thanks. We need a completely new deal for municipalities in the province of Ontario. That's what the Ontario Greens are advocating. These huge property tax increases in Guelph and across the province, I call them the Doug Ford property tax increase. I was successful in pushing back against Bill 23, which would have changed the development charge formula, putting even more pressure on municipalities. We got the Ford government to backtrack on that. But what we really need is we need to upload shelter and housing costs that should have never been put on the property tax base. We need to cover 50% of local transit costs to improve reliability and affordability. And we need predictable, sustainable, bankable funding for municipalities. That's why the Ontario Greens have put forward an Affordable Communities Fund that would provide $20 billion over the next 4 years for municipalities to invest in the infrastructure we need to unlock housing, especially so it's not on existing property taxpayers or new homeowners. That's how we can build affordable communities.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Go ahead, Cameron.
So we need the municipalities need a new deal. Mike's right. He's mentioned some of the things that are on the NDP platform as well. Guelph needs water in order to build up, to build density, right? And they can't pay for that infrastructure just based on property taxes alone. What the NDP is going to do is bring in, infrastructure funding that doesn't have to be applied for on a one for one basis that just flows to cities. Previous governments going back 20 years have taken money away from municipalities, have taken funding away from municipalities, and taken transit funding away, and it needs to come back. And most importantly as well, we need to adjust base funding for the University of Guelph, because if we don't address that funding shortage, we won't have a University of Guelph. We won't have a medical school if that's what they want.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Cameron. We're going to shift to housing a little bit, which I know we've touched on already, but I think housing is a major issue for a lot of citizens in Guelph. So, and we're going to go Mike, Cameron, Mustafa for this. So, Ontarians continue to struggle to find access to suitable, affordable, and accessible housing options. How will your party work to increase the supply of housing options from across the housing continuum in Guelph, Mike?
Yeah, we need more housing choices for people. Right now, it feels like it's tall or sprawl with very little in between. That's why I'm so focused on gentle density and missing middle housing, changing the zoning laws to legalize that and make it faster and less expensive for developers to build that kind of housing. Our first-time homebuyers plan would reduce taxes and fees for first-time home buyers buying homes under 2,000 square feet within existing urban boundaries, saving up to $150,000 on a new home, because we can't simply, it's unfair. A whole generation of young people wondering if they'll ever own a home, including my two colleagues here today. We also have to bring in rental protections. We've seen Guelph residents through just a couple of bad acting landlords, rent evictions, and things like that are just inappropriate. And as I've said earlier, government has to get back to the table of building nonprofit co-op and permanent supportive housing. Like, go check out Fife Road Co-op. That's a community of homes that people can afford.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mike. Cameron.
Yeah, just door knocking you through this town has shown me how difficult it is to have a relationship with a landlord as a tenant. I have luckily been wearing ice cleats because I can always tell when I'm up against a rental because the snow hasn't been removed. Everybody knows that's the landlord's responsibility to remove, whether they shift that onto the tenant or not. The NVP would like to make sure that tenants aren't being evicted or wrongly evicted or evicted just because people want to raise prices. They want to bring the rent cap back and invest in co-ops, invest in houses to switch over to co-ops and build as many houses as possible and deeply affordable, permanently affordable houses. It's a real difficult situation. It's very hard on parents, especially when we're renting. Having storage for your kids' toys, it's difficult.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cameron. Mustafa, go ahead.
So, like I mentioned, housing is a big deal to me. And starting off, we have our the More Homes You Can Afford plan, which will help save $170,000. Like I mentioned, through scrapping development charges, scrapping the land ta transfer tax elimination, bringing back rental control. And the biggest thing that I feel like my colleagues here that I want to shed some light on for them is that one of the reasons why we've had skyrocketed rental prices here in Guelph is because when the province downplays and cuts a lot of funding to the university, The university, unfortunately, also has its hands tied, meaning that they have to bring in, so they have to balance the cost somehow by either cutting programs or bringing in thousands of new students every year, whether they be local or international. What that has done is when you have an influx of students coming in every year, we have a rental cost skyrocket through the roof. I've had people reach out to me asking me to look for a place for them, students, their parents, and so on and so forth. It's a disaster. And if we will cap the international student gap to 10% every year, we will see significant change in the rental costs here in Guelph and the housing prices across.
Perfect. Thank you so much. The next question is also about housing. It's going to go Cameron, Mustafa, and then Mike. Supply is only one aspect of the housing crisis. What will your party do to improve the affordability of rent in Guelph and across Ontario?
Yeah, so by bringing in new rental units and bringing in co-op housing, the rent's going to go down a little bit. By providing base funding to the university so that the university can um, continue to build residences for its students and provide for its students and not have to bring in so many international students to to make their money, then that's going to severely help with our rental cost in Guelph specifically, right? I'd like to point out that for 20, 30 years, governments have been cutting funding to universities. It's not like it happened overnight with the Doug Ford government, right? We need a government that can actually fund these universities properly, so we're not all competing with students.
Great. Thank you so much, Cameron. Mustafa.
So, yeah, like I mentioned, I've spoken to various people at the university, me being a Guelph alum myself. I've spent a healthy 5 years at the university there. I have looked at how at the start of the millennia, the University of Guelph was getting 80% funding from the province, which was their total budget. Right now, the total budget that comes from the province is 18%. So you can see that's a drastic drop from what the University of Guelph had. Now, we want the University of Guelph to improve life. I am a big advocate of supporting that. The main way we can get that done is bring that funding up from 18% to what it used to be before, or even closer to what it used to be before. That would see a dramatic change across that. We wouldn't have the university scrambling to get them to balance the books by bringing in thousands and thousands of students. It's not the students' fault. It's not our fault. It's not my fault that we don't get to deserve a place to call home. I've had people asking, Mustafa, can you please find me the place that I can put a roof over my head? Please look for a place to look for a landlord or a tenant that would give me a place for a cheaper price. If we bring in these investments, these issues will be history by the time I become MVP and then we have a liberal government and we will change this.
Perfect. Thank you, Mustafa. Mike.
Yeah, Andy, one of the reasons I've been so focused on my bill to legalize 6 to 11 story multi-residential buildings along major transit and transportation corridors in large urban centers like Guelph is that would cut the time in half and reduce the expense of building more rental units because we need more rental supply and we need to make sure that supply is affordable. Why, and that's one of the reasons it's so critically important that we invest in nonprofit and co-op housing. And to bring in protections for renters from above guideline rent increases, rent evictions, and making sure we have rent control in place. I appreciate my colleagues' comments on the University of Guelph. I would put Conestoga in the same equation. Um, as far as I know, we're the only party that's put forward a costed platform at this point that has substantial increases in base budget funding for colleges and universities because they need to have the resources to do the great work that they do.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mike. We're going to shift still in this same sort of realm, affordability, cost of living, inflation. So we're going to go Mustafa, Mike, and then Cameron. So what specific affordability measures will your party introduce to address the rising cost of living, Mustafa?
So we all know that buying your groceries right now is a tough challenge for a lot of people. So at the provincial level, the best we could do is raise competition amongst the big grocery companies and bring in that sort of competition, which is always good for the consumer, which will help us a lot in the long term. Bringing in, so we were promised lower taxes and lower insurance rates. I'm paying about $280 a month to just drive my car. make it make sense. It's been a disaster under this government. We will be changing that immediately and looking at insurance reforms because it's been a total chaos of that sector. We can talk about housing affordability ability all day and bringing in healthcare, which would be good for the people that people need it and need it ASAP. Um, like I said, there's many different things that we could do in making housing affordable as well, like rental control, like scrapping development charges, land tax transfer. These things can be done together as a collective approach that will bring us affordability across the board and see a difference in prices. I wish I had more time to talk about that, but we can be here all day.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And Mike, you're up.
Andy, it's pretty distressing to see that food bank use is at an all-time high in Ontario, up 78% in the last 2 years, and increasingly seeing more and more full-time workers. That's one of the reasons the Ontario Greens are proposing to reduce taxes for individuals earning under 65,000 and households under 100,000 to help them save $1,700 a month to be able to help pay the bills. And we're being honest with people about how we would pay for it. We're going to ask those in the very top tax bracket to pay a bit more so we have some more fairness within the system. So our, lowest income workers can actually afford life. I'm proud to be the first politician in Ontario to call for doubling of ODSP rates to end legislated poverty in Ontario. It's great to see the other two opposition parties who've come on board with that pledge as well. And I'm going to continue to push Doug Ford to end legislated poverty in Ontario.
Great. Thank you so much. Cameron.
Yeah, the NDP's platform starts with to increase affordability starts with parents, right? Being a parent myself, I the first thing I did today when I got up was make my son a meal to go to school with. Um, it would be so much easier to provide a universal food program, which we're going to do at schools. That would save parents money. That would allow and make sure that kids are getting fed so that they're able to concentrate in class, improve mental health there. We want to provide a grocery rebate because we know groceries are really, really, really expensive right now. And with tariffs and things on the way, that might further increase that. We don't want to charge people for parking in a hospital. We want to properly fund hospitals so they don't have to use that as a revenue source. And we want to improve our protections against price fixing. We've all seen the prices go up one week and go down the next week. It's time for that to stop.
Perfect. Thank you so much. The next question will be Mike, and then Cameron, and then Mustafa. So, what will your party do to support people with disabilities and the aging population, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, can we just get every party in this province to sign on to the AODA pledge to actually make Ontario accessible? That legislation was passed in 2005, and unfortunately, Ontario missed its deadline in 2025 to have an accessible Ontario. I think we need to have accessible, universal accessible design into our building code to ensure housing is fully accessible for folks. And I just want to come back to how critically important it is to double ODSP. Like it is criminal in Ontario that we're asking people with disabilities to survive on $1,300 a month. Average market rent across the province is $1,600 a month. In Guelph, it's 2,000. Like the math doesn't add up. I'm a small business guy. Like you can't survive on that. I think it's criminal in Ontario that we're forcing people to live in legislated poverty. We're better than this. I know we're a more caring society than this. Let's fix it.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Cameron.
Yeah, I agree with Mike for the accessibility. It's a shame that Ontario hasn't met its goals. It's something that we really need to work on and get going on as quick as possible. But with seniors as well, we can't just be building long-term care centers everywhere because after the baby boom, what do we do with those long-term care centers, right? We're not changing them into housing. We have big buildings that are just going to be sitting there. So what we need to do is improve our capacity there by allowing seniors to age in the home and supporting them in the home. So the NDP is going to take small grants to install a chairlift or to help seniors adjust their home so that they can live there for longer. because they deserve it. We're also going to double ODSP. That's something that's close to my heart. And as I've said before, people on ODSP provide a lot more to society than people even realize.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We're going to shift gears a little bit to business competitiveness and economic recovery.
Do I get a chance?
Oh, sorry, Mustafa. I'm
Sweet.
so sorry about that. Yeah, go ahead.
No problem there, no problem. So I forgot to mention my last point there. In regards to savings, we would like to bring a tax cut for families that have just reached the middle income, which would help save by 22%. And that's just not for families and regular just people who have disabilities, seniors as well. It goes as a collective approach. I like how my colleagues have mentioned of doubling the ODSP. This is instant help that we need ASAP, that the current conservative government has said that they have brought up, but inflation adjusted, which I think is a bunch of baloney. But if we look at that, I've worked at the Evergreen Senior Center. I've been a city employee myself. I know that the seniors are struggling at the moment. They are struggling to get the basic services they need. We need to make it accessible to get the funding that they need. And how can you call it accessible funding like ODSP when it's hard for people like seniors and people who are disabled to access it online or wait long, very long times to get that funding? So we'll make it accessible to get the accessible funding. And at the same time, make sure that they're living in a community that doesn't treat them like they're long-term patients who are living a miserable life. We want to change that.
Great. Thank you so much. So we're going to shift gears to business competitiveness and economic recovery. Something that I've been dealing with a lot, obviously, lately is the economic threats from south of the border. So we're going to shift gears over there and we can hear your opinions about it. We're going to go Cameron, Mustafa, and then Mike. Underpinned by President Trump's economic threats, the federal government, the provincial governments across the country have discussed the need to remove interprovincial barriers. What action would your party take to remove interprovincial barriers, Cameron?
The NDP is committed to removing interprovincial barriers. I think one of the important aspects of responding to tariffs, especially in Guelph, we've got so much auto work here, and we're rated as one of the cities that's going to get hit the hardest with tariffs, right? And so we really need to provide as much as possible for the workers of Guelph because the economy is based on those workers. They're the ones that do the work, right? And if they lower the number of shifts in the local factory, those guys are going to be hurting. So we need to take care of them, and the NDP is here to do that. With the $120 grocery credit, with a universal food program in schools, with many other aspects, right? And again, I talked about how a healthy economy is an economy that has healthy workers, and that's absolutely incredibly necessary to get us through this tariff and this difficult part.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Mustafa.
Well, it's a sad reality, Andy, that we have to deal with a situation with our best friends and our allies that we have stood together throughout history. But unfortunately, this is the reality now, and we need to have a united front against the Americans, especially Donald Trump, in the way he has led this fight against us. We need to defend Ontario's interests. We need to drop the interprovincial trade barriers that will boost the Canadian economy, make it cheaper to access goods from across the country rather than us relying on American goods, bring in healthcare recruitment incentives, hire more doctors and nurses, recruit them locally rather than bringing international and American, bringing doctors back from the U.S. and the U.K. to have them train here in Canada, having tax cuts for people, bringing small business tax reduction and farmers reductions, so we can grow our food here locally at a much cheaper cost and have small businesses not feel the pressure of those tariffs. At the same time, have a fight tariff fund that will provide businesses with access to loans and diversify our businesses like Linamar and many other businesses that are relying on these goods that are sold to the US. This will help a total collective approach and fix this issue.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, in the face of the Trump tariff threats, I've been saying over and over again, we need to be working across party, jurisdictional, and sectoral lines to show strength through unity to have a pushback against the tariffs. We absolutely need free trade in Canada, so let's remove the interprovincial trade barriers. I also have been meeting with a lot of business owners in Guelph who even just the threat of tariffs has frozen investment. So it's one of the reasons Greens have been pushing for an investment tax credit to help unlock some of that investment to have job creation. I agree we need to make sure we support both businesses and workers who are most directly impacted by the tariff threats. One of the reasons we've put forward the idea of permanently protecting prime farmland in Ontario with the implementation of a food belt If there was ever a time, now is the time that we have to defend our farmers and protect our farmland for our food security and to support the $50 billion food and farming economy.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mike. We're going to kind of shift gears just a little bit, but jobs, workforce, which I think is all related to what we've been talking about already. So we're going to go Mustafa, Mike, and then Cameron. So we are still hearing that there is a shortage of skilled workers in Ontario. How will your party support additional development of a skilled workforce in Ontario and reskilling opportunities? Mustafa.
So, me being a 24-year-old, I've had a tough time getting a full-time job, like post graduation. It's been not just a problem for me, but many other students across Ontario. We're sitting at 17.1% youth unemployment rate. Like, make it make sense. We are penalizing our youth to study hard, spend all that money, go through all the problems that they have at affording a house, and on top of that, you can't find a job. So first and foremost, we will make sure that we incentivize and bring in investments to these companies that are looking to hire new students. We will make it easier for them to hire people of my age and particularly people who've been struggling to find a job. That will immediately increase our workforce. At the same time, for students who've been having a tough time paying off their bills and their debts, we will increase OSAP and lower the threshold to $50,000 of when they first end up making their job. It's really important that we need to have a strong workforce, and the youth is the forefront of that workforce. So we'll be looking to fix that.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Mike.
Andy, I've said this to the Provincial Chamber of Commerce, so I'll say it to all of you today. We need the business community to support those of us who are advocating for increased funding for post-secondary education. Ontario is dead last. It would take an additional $5 billion investment just to get us up to the provincial average. Colleges in this province are closing down vital programs. University of Guelph and others are doing major program reviews. This is going to create very strong barriers to access for students, and it's going to directly affect businesses. Our competitive advantage in Canada is a highly trained workforce. And if we don't invest in post-secondary education, we're going to lose that competitive advantage. And so all of us, I think, have to work together to put pressure on increasing funding to at least get Ontario colleges and universities up to the national average.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mike. Cameron.
Yeah, as someone who's gone through academia and understands how these universities work at a deep level. Um, Funding the universities and the colleges, that's where we're going to get those skilled workers from. But the people who work at those universities, unfortunately, do not get paid. As myself, as someone with a PhD who was teaching at McMaster, I taught a course at McMaster and was paid $7,000 for the course. I didn't even have a parking pass. I had to pay for my own parking. These universities are some of the most exploitive employers out there. We need to fund them so that they can pay their workers so that people can get a better education. Because with education, it's the workers who are doing the work and they need our help.
Thank you so much, Cameron. So we're going to shift gears a little bit to early childhood education, child and youth workers, an industry which I'm sure all of you are aware has been struggling as well. So we're going to go Mike, Cameron, and then Mustafa. So what actions will your party take to ensure the province can improve the development and retention of early childhood educators?
Yeah, pay early childhood educators a living wage. I mean, Manitoba's floor is $26 an hour. Ontario is not even close to that. If we're going to have a strong workforce, you have to pay people. I mean, I've talked to so many childcare operators here in Guelph and Wellington who are really struggling to retain staff because they're not allowed to pay them, or they don't have the resources to pay them. So, kudos to the federal government for bringing in the $10 a day childcare program. But that program isn't going to succeed if we don't have enough spaces available for people. And there's a huge shortage of childcare spaces across the province and right here in our community. And we're not going to address those shortages if we don't pay workers a living wage.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Cameron.
So these jobs that that education workers are working, I've listened to a lot of people, and they're telling me the same stories that mental health workers tell me. They get kicked, they get scratched, they get bitten during work. Um, it is really difficult to attract talent when you're not paying them, and the job is quite unsafe at times. Why is it unsafe? Because we're not funding our education systems. We're not funding our childcare systems. The NDP wants to produce new 53,000 new childcare spots at $10 a day. We'd like to pay workers what they're worth. And, you know, when you're a parent and you see the conditions in schools and you hear about the lack of funding there, you're very concerned for your child's future. And I know that the NDP can support our children better than any party out there.
So, you guys can hear me, right?
Yeah, go ahead,
Okay,
Mustafa. Go ahead.
perfect. So this issue hits close to me at home because my mom has been a teacher all her life. When we moved to Canada and she wanted to apply to become a teacher, she was refused because her credentials were back home weren't working. So she ended up going to take EC, early childhood education at Conestoga College. She did her 2-year program, went back to start working as a teacher. Guess what? The Doug Ford cuts had freezed hiring at the time, and my mom couldn't get a job for 2 or 3 years. That had caused a lot of long nights for my mom and I. I was working a part-time job at Popeyes at the time. I had to pitch in out of my own pocket to help with the bills. We need to lower the class sizes. That'll ease the burden and the pressure that teachers face every single day. My mom has faced workplace injuries, uh, and has had a tough time dealing with some kids that she's been feeling overburdened with. We need to change that. We need to provide teachers a fair living wage and a much more better place to be working at. And lowering class sizes and providing the funding for these teachers will be the start of that. And $10 a day childcare, 100% support that, and that'll be a good way to eliminating these problems.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mustafa. So we're going to shift gears to education now, which I know we've all touched on for different reasons earlier. So we're going to go Cameron, Mustafa, and then Mike for this. So post-secondary institutions like the University of Guelph and Conestoga College have been struggling financially because of tuition freezes, reduction in international students, and increasing costs. Does your party have a plan to support post-secondary education, Cameron?
Yeah, we've released that we're going to up base funding for these schools. It's essential. And the schools themselves, we saw what happened with Laurentian and the things that the government used to dismantle Laurentian. And there we had the Northern School of Medicine, which is a great school of medicine. We need to avoid that ever happening again. It's an absolute shame that York University just released that they have frozen enrollment for 18 courses. This shouldn't be happening to us. We are so much better than this. We can fund education. These are the people who are going to be caring for our kids. They're going to be caring for us when we're older, when we're sick in hospitals. They're going to be running our country. And we need to ensure that they have the knowledge, the critical thinking skills, and the understanding of our society so that we can create a better society in the future. Without education, we're nothing.
Perfect. Thank you. Mustafa, go ahead.
So, like I mentioned, this issue is very close to me as well because applying for classes sometimes was a burden because you would have a bunch of students applying to this one class, and if you had the other option, guess what? The other option was either cut by the university or was not available anymore, which led to lesser quality of education overall. And I'm just talking about our University of Guelph. We were talking about other universities across the province as well. That's because of the lack of funding that the province has been giving. I mentioned funding went from 80% to 18%. You're going to see these effects across the board. And I believe quality education and housing go hand in hand. So if we fund the universities across Ontario, we will see a reduction in levels of stress. We will see higher quality of education and we'll see better housing as well. So I believe that if we have a collective approach to these things, we can have a much better education system. We can have a much better quality of life for students, local and international. And these things shouldn't be a problem in the first place. We're a first world country. We're a first world province. If we fix these issues, these issues will be history of the past. And I, as your Liberal MPP, will be looking at this because this is near and dear to me.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, we have to reverse the 20 years of cuts to post-secondary education. The Ontario Greens costed platform far exceeds the amount of money that even the Blue Ribbon panel projected, because, as I said earlier, it'll take $5 billion of additional investment in post-secondary education to get us to the national average. We're committed to doing that in our costed platform, because we can't continue to see the program closures at both the college and university sector. The other thing we need to do is actually fully pay for the students universities are admitting. The University of Guelph is admitting more students right now than they're actually funded for, just because they don't want to deny people access to education. So those spaces have to be paid for, as well as properly funding post-secondary.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We're going to shift to the environment now. So we're going to go Mustafa, Mike, and then Cameron. What efforts will your party make to incentivize sustainable innovation and help businesses transition to more sustainable operations and products? Mustafa.
So first of all, we will not be cutting up the green belt and building 413. That's a given. Instead, the best way we can address housing and boost our economy is helping local municipalities that we drive by every single day, but we don't notice them. These municipalities are desperately looking for investments and funding. And if we invest in in these municipalities with healthcare, education, business incentives, and housing, we will be tackling housing, education, healthcare, and so on and so forth by not scrapping up our green belts, but while investing in these communities, you will see an immediate growth and a much healthier community as well. Not just in the GTA. We need to look at other population centers that are across the GTA: London, Southwestern Ontario, Ottawa, Windsor, so on and so forth. This will grow our population in a much healthy manner. We will be addressing the housing crisis. We will be incentivizing the businesses that live there, and also grow more businesses that will be going over there. Like, this would be a game changer if we looked at these incentives, and then the municipalities will be thanking us, and we will not be having a housing crisis in the future as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Mike, go ahead.
Andy, we'll be bringing in, the Ontario Greens will be bringing in programs that will help people and businesses save money by saving energy. I can't tell you how many businesses have reached out to me to say, like, hey, how can we cut our energy costs? Well, one of the ways we can do that is our plan to remove the HST on things like heat and cooling pumps, energy efficiency retrofits, solar panels, electric vehicle chargers, etc. We will help homeowners reduce their energy use and save money. A free heat pump program for households under $100,000 based off of the program in PEI New Brunswick, which will help people save 13% off of their home heating and cooling costs. And a zero interest loan program for households over $100,000 so they can make these money saving investments. We have a number of solutions that can help us reduce climate pollution, save businesses and people money. We just need a government that's going to provide the incentives to do it.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Cameron, go ahead.
Yeah, so there's lots we can do. Obviously, we're not going to build on the green belt. We're not going to allow the Fort 13 to be built. We need to act quickly to mitigate the effects of climate change, because we know that 100-year floods are happening in every 5, 10, or even a couple of years. But here in Guelph specifically, I really want to see an urban park here. That's federal money that can be brought in to help the community. It's a perfect spot for the urban park. Yeah, Mike says that the hospital is there, and we have to let the hospital figure out whether they can build there. I'm of the opinion that building on a floodplain is not a very good idea for the hospital. I don't think we need to wait for the hospital to decide that. We need to build it now. And Mike, Cam Guthrie, and Lloyd Longfield all signed a confidential memo about not building the urban park there, and that's something that we didn't find out about until July this year.
So, Mike, you were named there. So if you want to rebuttal, you are.
That's all right. No worries, Andy.
Okay. Okay. Cool. So this is going to be the final question, and then we will get to closing remarks after. The order of this will be Mike, Cameron, and Mustafa. So there's a lot to get done over the next 4 years, as we all know, and everything has a cost attached to it. How is your party going to source and prioritize your spending and your investment over the next 4 years? So, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, well, Andy, the Greens the only party that's actually released a fully costed platform, so we're still waiting for the others. And I think it's important because we have to be honest about how we're going to pay for things. So first of all, we would redirect wasteful spending that's happening right now. The $2.2 billion subsidy for the four-known mega spa in downtown Toronto, tens of billions of dollars for the tunnel under the 401, $10 to $12 billion to build Highway 413. Just no to all of that and actually redirect it to higher priorities: housing, healthcare, education. We have to reduce the $1,500 cut per student in our K to 12 education. Secondly, we would lower taxes on low and middle income workers and ask those in the highest tax bracket to pay a bit more to bring some fairness to address the affordability challenges people are facing. And as I mentioned, we were lower fees and taxes on new home construction, just to address affordability concerns that people have.
Great. Thank you so much. Cameron, go ahead.
The NDP will prioritize healthcare to begin with. We're going to do our best to create an economy that's affordable, that's healthy, that is working for people, not for the very large profits that some companies are making. We want to improve Ontario, and what we need to do is we need to elect a government that hasn't gotten us into this mess. Both parties that have ruled in the last 20, 30 years have certainly put us into this mess. It's time to pick someone new to get us out. Picking the same names are is just it's the definition of insanity. If we think that people are going to fix this who put us into this situation, it's just not something that's going to happen. We need to do better.
Perfect. Thank you, Cameron. Mustafa, go ahead.
So we will not be prioritizing non-priorities such as spas and more booze and a fantasy tunnel underneath the 401. That's just a waste of your taxpayers' dollars. That's your money, Guelph. That's your money, Ontario. That's not Doug Ford's money. He can just do whatever he wants with that. So with the Liberal government, we will be incentivizing and looking and investing in places that matter to the most to the Ontarian to the people of Ontario. With that being said, we will not be having wasteful spending, instead investing into the future that will help us grow some of that money back and have a good investment in the future. We will be prioritizing the areas that matter to the most, the people to the most, and you know, investing in our resources such as lithium, having EVs grown here in Ontario, having local businesses grow, and providing that sort of tax cut that people should not be paying. We shouldn't be seeing property taxes go up. We shouldn't be seeing these taxes go up. It's your money that's being spent, and we want to spend it carefully so that you're not penalized for it in the future. And that's a good use for it in the future as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mustafa. We're going to move to closing remarks. So just a reminder, everyone gets 90 seconds for closing remarks. We're going to go reverse order from how we went with the opening remarks. So it's going to go Mustafa, Cameron, and then Mike. So you now have 90 seconds with your closing statement. Go ahead, Mustafa.
Well, thank you so much, Guelph Chamber of Commerce and Andy, for having me on this panel. It's been a great panel discussion so far. You know, I have been someone who's lived in this community and I've lived pretty much half my life here now. I know the issues of this city, and I know the issues that people go through in this city as well. I also know what it needs to be taken to be fixing these issues as well, because I have been there with being staying up late at night, not having the like not having an answer to know what's going to be coming tomorrow. Unfortunately, Doug Ford's cuts have hurt our healthcare, made our housing unaffordable, left our schools struggling, left our people struggling, left our system struggling. How can we incentivize the people of the future when we have such an unstable future looking for them in the future, when we can't even afford a home? Doug Ford has been wasting money on unnecessary election that the money that could have gone into your pockets for more family doctors, for more healthcare, for more affordable housing. This election is not about Doug Ford. This election is about you. I want to make sure that if I become your MPP, I will be addressing these issues within the first mandate, within the first 4 years of our government. I've had colleagues here. Mr. Schreiner has had 7 years to address a lot of these issues. NDP has said a lot of good things, but hasn't put Doug Ford accountable to what they have. And if you have a Liberal government, Liberals are the best solution to hold Doug Ford accountable. In this election, let's send a message that Guelph will not be ignored. Let's choose a government that works for you. And if I get the chance to be your MPP, I'll be ready to fight for you. Let's get to work. I'm Mustafa Zuberi. Thank you so much for having me over.
Thank you, Mustafa. Cameron, go ahead.
Yeah, so going back to what I said to begin this entire thing, we need an economy. An economy is made of our workforce, and our workforce needs to be healthy. It needs to be affordable to live in Guelph. It needs to be, it needs to have good education to both produce the skilled workers necessary to drive our economy, but also to make sure that our kids are taken care of, that their mental health grows, their resilience grows, and that we as a community grow together, right? I want to bring the voices of Guelph together, and take them to Queen's Park and make sure that the needs of our community are taken care of. There are a lot of vulnerable members of our community that are having a very difficult time. This is an election that is very important to many of us. We've seen what happened in the States where people voted for a guy who they didn't realize what was going to happen. We know what's going to happen. Doug Ford's told us what's going to happen. We know what happens with a liberal government. We know that cuts, privatization doesn't stop. It just gets swept under the rug a little bit. What we don't know is what life's like without the liberals or without the conservatives. And I'd like you to choose the NDP because we need to choose a better life.
Perfect. Thank you, Cameron. Mike, go ahead. You've got 90 seconds.
I want to just thank everyone for tuning in and thank you, Chamber, for hosting and my two colleagues for being a part of the conversation. I feel like one of the things I've been able to accomplish is both being able to be one of the most effective people at Queen's Park, holding the Ford government accountable, while at the same time delivering for my riding. And we've done that as a community, securing the funding we need to build permanent supportive housing. We've led the charge in Ontario in that regard. We have more to do to meet our goal of ending homelessness in Guelph. I want to finish that. We've secured funding for our hospital. But man, we need more and we need a new hospital. I want to get that across the finish line. For the first time in 2 decades, we've gotten 195 new long-term care beds at the nonprofit facilities in Guelph. We need more. I want to continue to work on that. We've secured funding for the youth mental health hubs. Guelph and Wellington is leading the province in that regard, but we need more, and I want to keep doing that work. I've helped secure funding for the expansion of the veterinary program at the University of Guelph, but as we've said, all of us, many times today, we need more funding for post-secondary. And I want to continue to stand in solidarity with educators in this province to push back against the Ford government's $1,500 per student cut to education. Proud of the fact we've secured the funding for the new high school in the south end of Guelph, but man, we need more money to support our teachers.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm just going to provide a few closing remarks. So first of all, thank you to all the candidates. It's wonderful to have you all here. I think it's great to have a very open dialogue, let you respond to some very direct questions. So that kind of concludes our Q&A session for today, the closing remarks. So thank you for everybody for tuning in. We're posting today's recording on YouTube tomorrow. So everybody will be able to view it as of tomorrow. It'll be up there with a link that you guys can all share, and we're going to send it out as well. So just a reminder to everyone, Election Day is February 27th. So please vote. That's the one thing I could encourage everyone to do is we need to vote. Voter turnout's been typically very low in the province the last couple elections, and we really need to get that going. So thank you all very much for today, and thanks for everyone tuning in, and thank you all for your attendance.